Hi folks, putting out a lighter video this week. With a few years of spring football, we've seen many quarterbacks perform in their best abilities. So today, I'll be ranking my top 10 quarterbacks of the modern spring football era, from being from AAF in 2019 to recent play from the USFL and the XFL. Shout out to the End Zone for giving me this idea. Be sure to check him out if you like spring football as much as I do. Let's get into it. But first, I have some honorable mentions to go through. Silvers is a spring football vet starting in the AAF Memphis Express and playing in the XFL, Spring League, FCF, and back in the XFL with Houston. What ultimately puts Silvers outside this list is he hasn't been successful. He's played enough for teams to look at him, but he's been benched twice in the XFL for a reason. He's been a serviceable quarterback in the spring, and that's something to acknowledge. Even though he's starting the Spring League, since being in the USFL, Johnson has been an impressive quarterback to watch, but he's had problems being with the Generals. He would be behind Luis Perez for the first season, and the second season was a bit of an improvement, but suffered an injury when the Generals needed him the most. And the team kept switching in between Dakota Prokop and Kyle Lauletta. Johnson needs a whole season to himself to make the list, so New Jersey better start him because he's that guy. Dormady was solid for the Guardians. What keeps him off the list has to do more with the team than himself. They started Paxton Lynch over him, giving Dormady his first start in week 6, halfway through the season. Not to mention the allegations for giving a rival team the playbook that kept him out for a few games. He just didn't have enough playing time for me to make the list. But if he plays how he did in the next season, I can see that change quickly. After spending a couple seasons in the CFL, Williams made his mark with the Maulers, leading them to the USFL Championship. Started since week 3, he had a solid season overall. What keeps him off the list is mainly that the other guys on here just done more against the one season. He runs it back next season, I'll gladly add him on the list. Aside from one other AAF quarterback, Wolford did pretty well with the spring football. Case in point, he's still in the NFL after the fact. But his team wasn't the greatest as they were hot cold, but it's still cool to see him successful in the NFL, even winning a Super Bowl ring. But with just one season in the spring, against others, he just fell short. Shockingly, even with his age, Johnson was one of the best quarterbacks that played in the XFL in 2020. But the Wildcats were successful, and the season was only for 5 games. Johnson was good, but against the rest of these folks, he just needs some more games to put him on the list. I mean, he's still in the NFL, so I don't think he's complaining that much. Alrighty, now it's time to get to number 10. MBT's only got one season in spring football, filling in the shoes as the New Orleans Breakers quarterback won, and he did it well. It was important for MBT to succeed after the rebuilding of the Breakers' momentum after losing Kyle Slaughter and Larry Fedora. To say the least, the Breakers' offense was one of the best last season. New Orleans would go 7-3 and make the playoffs before being slaughtered by Birmingham in the division finals. MBT would be the leading passer in the USFL and keep the Breakers' hopes alive for a future championship. With what was in stake for MBT and the Breakers, MBT had to be on the list. Gucci DiNucci. After spending a chunk of his career with the Dallas Cowboys, he would be a star for the Sea Dragons last XFL season, point proven after making the Broncos practice squad this season. DiNucci was somewhat similar to MBT. Both went 7-3 and lost to the first round of the playoffs, and both led the league in passing yards. But I gave the edge to DiNucci mainly because he also ran over 300 yards and threw more than MBT. Otherwise, a very close call for the number 9 spot on my list. Slaughter was one of the hot quarterbacks produced from the USFL. Being an NFL practice squad journeyman, Slaughter was drafted by the Breakers and played as their QB1 for their first season. Safe to say, he was stellar, earning 2 Offensive Player of the Week awards and was all USFL for the 2022 season. He would lead the Breakers 6-4 and make the playoffs, but lose in the division finals against Birmingham. After he would go to the XFL, where his stint wasn't a great one, but then came back to the USFL as the Stallions' inactive QB3 and win a USFL championship ring. Though after the first initial season was productive, his season with the Breakers was a memorable one, being a fan favorite amongst the franchise. After 2 years of practice squads, Smith would be drafted by the Stallions behind Alex McGough. But to start the season, he would jump in after an injury to McGough, and the rest was history. He would earn one Offensive Player of the Week award and take his team 9-1, leading the USFL. Then he would win it all against the Stars in the USFL Championship. Though the next season would be cut short after being placed on IR, Smith's success for the first season was notable, especially in the fact that he wasn't the week 1 starter for Birmingham. I gave Jamar the edge over Slaughter because of the success of winning it all, but another tight call for the number 7 spot. The spring football vet of the modern era. Starting with the AAF, he's played for the Spring League, USFL, and the XFL. Almost every team he's been on went to the playoffs, not to mention he silenced everyone, winning the XFL Championship, entering as an under 500 team. Considering he started watching YouTube videos to play quarterback, winning the XFL Championship cements Perez on the spring football Mount Rushmore to me. Though his stats aren't as gratifying as the QBs ahead of him, his success is crucial, and if only some of the leagues he played made it through, Perez would be even a bigger name on this list. One of the more successful spring quarterback vets out there. Playing for the XFL and USFL, he's managed to stay QB1 for his 3 respective teams, as well as being able to be signed by an NFL team every time a spring season ends. What puts off Ta'amu to be number 5 is the success. The Battlehawks obviously didn't finish the season, and the Bandits didn't make the playoffs. Last season with the Defenders was his best chance, and he lost to Luis Perez Arlington Renegades. A common theme on my list amongst 2 QBs is very close on who gets the bigger spot, and I gave Ta'amu number 5 because he has been a better quarterback statistically, as well as Ta'amu having a higher ceiling than Perez in the long run. Since coming in the USFL, Cookus has been one of the few quarterbacks that's fun to watch. Since taking the starting role after a season-ender injury to Brian Scott, Cookus has played solid football for the Stars. If he started the season, there was a good chance he could have been an all-USFL player. He would lead his team to the championship, but lose to the Stallions. Last year would be somewhat of a step back, as the Stars would miss the playoffs for the first time in USFL history. But Cookus played his heart out, fighting off injuries and showing his grit. In the USFL, Cookus is one of the elites, but hasn't claimed anything for his performance other than a postseason appearance. Ah yes, the first breakout spring quarterback. Gilbert and the Apollos were the best team in the AAF, and one of the 2 teams already clinched the playoffs if the season didn't end in a dumpster fire. If you were like me, then you'd realize how good Gilbert was in the AAF. He was the only quarterback to throw over 2,000 yards, have 13 touchdowns to 3 picks, and had a 99.1 passer rating. The only thing that stopped him from greater feats was the league being run by incompetence. Gilbert has since started for the Cowboys and the former Washington football team, but is a free agent. Maybe he continues his reign in the spring football realm with the upcoming run of spring football, but he was the first, so that matters for something. This year's XFL MVP makes my list number 2. McCarron was elite all season through for the Battlehawks, being the XFL's passing touchdown, rating, and percentage leader. What stops McCarron from being in debate for number 1 is that he didn't make the playoffs. Due to tiebreakers, the Battlehawks would just lose out to the Sea Dragons for the postseason glory. All we can do is imagine what playoff AJ looks like, but we'd have to wait until next season. McCarron's coming back, and maybe with a bigger force to win it all.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Yep, it's 2 quarterbacks. Why? 1, it's my list and I do what I want. 2, giving one of these quarterbacks the number 1 spot gets the other not a fair chance. Let me get this straight. PJ Walker's the best quarterback in the spring, but he has an asterisk of only playing 5 games. With a full season, McGough was unanimously MVP for the Stallions in 2023. Both these men played elite football, but Walker only had 5 games, really makes it difficult to give it to one or the other. So that's why I'm giving the number 1 spot to both quarterbacks.
Walker sees it, floating in!
Spring football is going to climbing heights. If you look at my honorable mentions, there's a few guys I think that could overperform some of these guys on this list. Even the new guys coming in like TJ Edwards with the Brahmas, who killed it in the IFL. This list was relatively easy to make, but with a few more years, it'll get harder to put together.
my home.